If you look at your role as a privilege to serve those entrusted to your care, you don't take it personal when they question you, because your ultimate purpose is to serve them, not to have them serve you.
Welcome back to another episode of Andy's Talk. Today I'm joined by Mr. Dawley. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, brother.
I still feel like I have to call you Mr. Dawley. I've known you for a while, so it still feels like I got to do that.
Have you paid taxes at least 10 years?
Yeah.
Call me Shawn.
Okay. Shawn, how are you doing today?
I'm great, brother.
Thanks for coming out. You are very interesting, man. I first met you when you would come and do some motivational talks to our basketball team with Coach Kerber back in the day.
Oh my gosh!
Because I played with your son. So I've known you for a while and your family through the Christian Academy connection. But tell me a little about your history. Where did you? I know you from military, so tell me about the military background, your school, how'd you get in Louisville, Kentucky, basically?
Okay, so I was born in Louisville.
Okay.
And when I was 15, we moved to Palmyra, Indiana, which is not exactly a booming metropolis now, but in 1989, even less so, right? So graduated from North Harrison High School. And then when I was 17, I enlisted in the Air Force and spent 4 years as an aircraft mechanic and was not very good at it. But I was able to take advantage of their educational programs and tuition benefits. And so I got a degree in aeronautics, then went to pilot training, and that's where I spent the preponderance of my what ended up being 25-year career in the Air Force. Yeah.
Okay. Where did the Air Force take you? Because I did have your daughter on, and she was saying all around the world, you've been traveling a lot. So where's some of the coolest places that took you?
So I think when I finally counted it up, the continents were easy to count, everything but Antarctica. So 6 continents, and then I think I got somewhere north of 80 different countries.
I took a note here that you were in 80 countries, and that's crazy. So.
Yeah, but at the same time, what I would tell people is to say that I've been to 80 countries, even numerous times, means that I've probably seen 1% of the world.
Yeah. Because
to spend, let's say, 4 days in Quito, Ecuador, doesn't mean that I know anything and everything about Ecuador, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm cautious to be mindful that as much as I've seen, there's still so much that I have not.
How has that exposure to all that diversity, 80 countries, how's that shaped how you lead, how you think about the world? I mean, when you talk about like having a worldview, like that's almost as big as a worldview as you can get. Yeah.
So the word in corporate parlance, diversity, usually has a certain connotation to it. But what all that travel did for me is make me really appreciate the importance of intellectual diversity.
Yeah.
All of us are somewhat beholden to our own journey and experience. And so if you put a problem on the table, I am going to reflexively analyze it based on my vantage point. But what I found from traveling is that if you put a problem on the table in front of a musician and a scientist and an engineer and an artist, you're going to get multiple perceptions of the problem, and then by extension, multiple angles on the solution. And so the way that ended up manifesting in my leadership was whenever I would have the opportunity to build and handpick a team, whether or not they were demographically diverse was a byproduct. I wanted intellectual diversity. Because if you have 10 people in the room who think the exact same way, 9 are redundant. And so when it comes to building and assembling a team, you want to make sure that you have the artists and the scientists.
Yeah.
The creative people, the analytical people. And so traveling around the world, getting a chance to see the culture through their eyes, I think probably gave me a much broader perspective.
And that makes a lot of sense. When Ethan hired me here, usually every one of our employees goes through Roofing 101. Mm-hmm. He did not want me to go Roofing 101 because I didn't know anything about roofing, and he liked that. Like, I don't want you to know anything. How would you fix this problem? How would you show the community what this problem is? And that's really helped. So now anybody that comes in on our creative team, I'm like, I don't want them to know anything about roofing because everybody else knows about roofing. But how would you fix this problem or tell people about it? So that's really cool that you say that because I've never thought about it like that. But if everybody's on the same page, then...
Well, so, you, though, might have a business or homeowner's perspective, right? And so given the position that you're in, your job is to translate the value of your product to the consumer. And so if I am asked to go speak at, let's say, an HR conference, I've never been in HR. I don't know the Department of Labor rules that govern human resources, but I have been a commander and a corporate executive who had to lean on HR. And so when I get on that stage, I don't try to teach them HR. I try to tell them from the CEO or COO's perspective, this is what you can do to be more influential in your role. And so usually when we have that ability to talk to an audience from a different vantage point, we can frame it and convey it in a way that gives them more value than if you were just another subject matter expert.
That's such a good point. So you sound very knowledgeable, and you were telling me before that you barely slid through high school in North Harrison, or you said it wasn't your thing. So tell me,
correct.
How'd you go from that to like the Harvard commander, corporate person you were today? Like, what was that transition
Yeah,
like?
so I absolutely, this is not false modesty. I've got the report cards to back it up. I was an absolutely horrible K through 12 student, just abysmal. And it wasn't because I think I was dumb. I think it was because I didn't study for tests. I didn't turn in homework. I daydreamed a lot during class, and I would usually get enough credits to get that D- and sometimes and move along. But when I was in the Air Force, I was in basic training, and we were probably 3 or 4 weeks in, and we are all, busy making our bunks. And, we all have these experiences in life when something is permanently etched into your brain. And to this day, 30 some odd years removed, I can close my eyes and picture it like it was yesterday. I look up and I see everybody in the barracks. There's 55 dudes in there, 18 to 20 years old for the most part. I was the youngin' at 17. So I look up and everybody is dressed the same, with the same buzz cut, same dog tags, same boots, doing the exact same thing. And I had this I didn't have the vocabulary at the time to understand epiphany or meritocracy, but the sentiment was there. I realized in this environment, you will sink or swim on your own merit. So in my childhood, it wasn't exactly Norman Rockwell. I had some difficulties, but at this point, I realized there is no excuse I can hide behind.
Yeah.
And so that allowed me to sort of like metaphorically flip a switch, and then I began to apply myself, and things worked out, yeah.
I feel like that's a lot of times. We have some people that are actively Marines that work at Andy's Roofing, and they were talking about, they're just the idiot kids out there not thinking about anything. And the moment you join that military, it's just like you can't not be that way. It really changes how you think and turns you into a man. So is that kind of how you felt? Like, was it that immediate switch?
In large measure it was. Now, it didn't mean that I could instantly download some of the inertia that I had picked up, like some excuse making and whining and moaning. But insofar as a revelatory breakthrough that life is not about chance, it is about choice. Certain misfortune will befall you, but at the end of the day, there is no value that comes in throwing a pity party for yourself. Once I shed that as an impediment, it was amazing how quickly things began to turn in my favor.
Yeah.
And so one thing I will say about the time in the military, there were some great times and there were some challenging times, but flying combat missions provide you an opportunity to really get in touch with who you are at the core level. So it pulls the curtain back, I think, on your own character, and you get to kind of see what's really underneath. And so the opportunities it provided me allowed me to probably mature a little more quickly than I would have had I not gone that route.
Yeah.
That was my route. It's not for everybody, but that was, my particular path.
So you said you started working on the airplanes, wasn't for you. So you did end up becoming a pilot. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah.
What was your aircraft of choice? What did you end up flying the most?
The tactical C-130. So
Okay.
the C-130 comes in a lot of different variations and variety, and the one we flew was primarily used for, like low level, where we could do infiltration, exfiltration, air medical evac. We could fly formation on night vision goggles and put payloads onto objective areas and targets. So it provided a lot of variety. In like Iraq or Afghanistan, one day I may be doing an air medical evacuation for troops in contact. The next day I may be dropping PSYOP leaflets onto a Taliban stronghold. So
Okay.
you just never knew what Monday would look like.
Can you still close your eyes and fly that thing?
When it comes to like the stick and rudder aspect of it, for sure. What I will say, however, is that getting to that elite, like Jedi level, where you are one with the battle space and you have this 4-dimensional model of everything going on around you, it would take me a while to get that back.
Yeah.
Because there's situational overload. You become so task saturated that to get to that high priesthood level, it would take me a while to get back to that.
Yeah.
But insofar as, hey, our 2 pilots just passed out up here. They have food poisoning. Is there anybody that can land this plane? I can probably touch it down between the white lines, and we could walk away, but the plane may not be usable.
That was my next question. Do you still fly recreationally, or do you do?
Not a bit.
Okay.
Not a bit.
You like sitting back and let somebody else do it for you now?
I, to some degree, will probably always wonder what's going on in the cockpit.
Yeah.
You know, when I step onto the aircraft, I always take a peek inside. I look at the instruments, and I look at the guys and gals at this point, you know, behind it. But I have no problem just sitting in seat 37F, kick back with a book, letting the other guys do the work to get me there.
Tell me a little bit about so you were military, and then you said you did go into corporate world. How did that transition go, and where did you work? Who did you work for?
Yeah, so coming out of the military after 25 years, when I retired, I went at first to Humana. Now, I've got no medical or clinical background, so it was in business development, just strategic executive leadership type stuff. But then went into another company called Genesis, where I was working. It's a medical staffing company with a nationwide footprint, but they're business to business, so they're not probably a household name. And then a couple of years ago, decided, all right, I've been toying with this idea of going into business with myself for about 10 years, and I've gone to the dry erase board about a dozen times to sketch it out. Finally decided just to rip the Band-Aid off and do it. So, you know, here I am.
So tell me about that. We talked about it before we pressed record, but you said there's kind of 3 pillars to what you do. So explain those pillars, even for you guys listening, how you could get in contact with him. But what are the 3 pillars that you're doing for your business now?
So at one extreme end, I do a lot of keynote speaking. Okay. So it's me up on a stage to a crowd, very one-directional. And I like to say that I am not speaking to them, but with them, and I'll spare you the artwork that goes into that. But that is one edge. The other edge is one-on-one executive coaching. And this is typically something I'm doing with either business owners or more senior level executives in an organization. And then in the middle is not one to many or one to one, but one to few, where I'm speaking with anywhere from 10 to 100 people during a half-day, full-day, 2-day workshop for either professional or leadership development. So it could be topical, planning, execution, conflict management, crisis leadership. And I've got proprietary course curriculum that I've developed over the years that all weaves some common principles into it. But unlike a keynote where it's mostly me doing all the talking, in the workshops, when I'm doing that with accomplished professionals, I'm more of a facilitator. I'll give them some ideas and we'll unpack some principles, but then we'll use Q&A and interactive group activities to really kind of bring them to life.
When you talk without being with all of these leaders and, you know, even leaders in our company's managers, what's your biggest misconception about leadership? That's
That's okay. No, that's okay, brother. I think oftentimes leaders lean into the idea of establishing the destination, and that is a primary responsibility of leadership to set the destination. I think, however, they skip over the first half of that equation, which is to understand the point of origination. And what I mean by that is that we leaders who are constantly thinking about problems, once we crack the code on one and say, okay, we're going that way, we maybe forget that those entrusted to our care don't have that perspective. And so if you and I were going to take a trip and I set the destination but didn't go pick you up, we're never going to make the journey. Yeah. And so as a leader, we often think, okay, well, I'm the leader, I know where we're going to go. Do we also understand where our people are starting from? Because if we don't go and meet them both intellectually and emotionally where they are, we'll find ourselves frustrated, like, why don't these people get it? When it's your job to help them get it. You have to go meet them where they are, and that is where the journey begins, not where you're already standing.
And if you flip-flop that, what's the biggest pain point you think people that you manage have? Is that it? Like, this leader's always just pushing, they don't care about me. Is that what you see the most of, or what pain point do you think they have?
Yeah, so what I have found is that, let me use an example. when I was leading a 4-ship formation and I said, Derby 20 flight, in place 90 left now, I expect wingmen 2, 3, and 4 to key the mic and say 2, 3, 4. Okay. But back it up. When I was planning that 4-ship formation, I had no problem with those same wingmen asking why. Why are we going in high? Why are we going in low? Why do we zig? Why do we zag? I had no problem with that because I wanted to be surrounded by smart people, and smart people are why people. And so as a leader, if we just give them the who, the what, the when, the where, and the how, but do not slow down to explain the why, if we do not give them a reason, at a minimum, there will be resistance. At most, there can be rebellion. And so a common pain point that people have with their leader is, I'm not exactly sure why we're doing this. It's crystal clear to the leader because they live in these problems and they think about them all the time. We have to slow down and help everybody else sometimes catch up.
And do you think there's leaders, I'm sure you deal with this, that take that why question as a criticism to themselves? Like, what do you mean? Why are you asking why? You're my, I lead you.
Right. So sometimes we do. And all leaders to some degree have ego because underneath every leader is a person, right? And we people are wired sometimes with fragile egos. But what I would encourage leaders to remember is it your goal to be right or is it your goal to do right? Because if you are focused on the things, my title, my status, my reserved parking spot, and you're not focused on the verbs, guide, inspire, remediate, discipline, coach, resource, you can make those things much more personal. If you look at your role as a privilege to serve those entrusted to your care, you don't take it personal when they question you because your ultimate purpose is to serve them, not to have them serve you.
Yeah, and that's so good. And that's something that our owner here does very well is he'll usually go up and be like, hey, what would you do in this scenario? He already has it planned out in his head, and he already knows. But like, it makes those people feel special, and maybe sometimes it is like, oh, I didn't think about that. But
absolutely,
that's one of the biggest leadership things I've learned here. Is just like for the guys underneath me or girls underneath me, hey, how would you fix this problem? What do you think about this?
Yeah.
And it changes the entire team and the morale of the team. To be honest with you,
and that cuts two different ways because it is an incumbent responsibility upon anybody put in a leadership position to keep the proverbial trains running on time. Like after all is said and done, we have a task and we need to get it done morally, legally, ethically. At the same time, our time will end. And so a significant responsibility that every leader has is to continue to grow and to develop people that have been entrusted to him or her so that when that leader leaves, the organization doesn't only keep going, it goes even better. And so I always loved the opportunity to bring somebody in during the decision-making process and get their perspective. Like, okay, what would you do? And even if their input doesn't change my mind, we now have laid down a marker. And so when I put that decision in place and it works out or it doesn't work out, that person can reflect back and think about, well, what did I learn along the way? Because now we're giving that person real-time leadership laboratory experience to see what a decision looks like when it actually goes into execution mode.
If you could go back in time to that 17, 18-year-old Shawn Dawley and say, this guy has it. He wants to be a leader. Someday he wants to, whatever those goals were. What are some tips and pointers you would give that 17-year-old? Like, do these things for the next 10 years. Follow these people. Read as much as you can. Listen. Like, what are the things that you would give? Maybe 3 or 4 things that, like, this is what you need to do to set yourself up for success to be a leader.
So first, I would tell them, make sure that you understand that this is never about you. I think that it's tempting to always put ourselves as the protagonist in our own story. But I feel like whenever I have led from a position of humility where, okay, this is a responsibility and a privilege that has been given to me, how can I do it in such a way that it benefits those around me and it puts me in last place? Insofar as some like fundamental and tactical like how-tos, what I would encourage them to do is approach leadership as if it is a profession unto itself. We are very good in the K through 12 system at producing scholars and athletes. We have a system that is set up for that. And so in this country, we're pretty good at producing people who are technically proficient across a range of skills. I mean, I want the cardiac surgeon to be very good when they cut on me, right? However, I used to think that leadership was something that just kind of got sprinkled around the edges. But what I found out was that core leadership principles cut across company, cut across departments, cut across industries, because ultimately leadership is about influence. And that basic fundamental human interpersonal dynamic has not changed since the Garden of Adam and Eve. And so if we look at leadership and approach it as a skill that can be developed and improved, it has a way of manifesting across all different aspects of our professional pursuits.
That's so good. Well, we really appreciate you coming out. And something I do want to ask: what's your favorite restaurant in the area? Give it. Oh man, you got to leave these people with. This is where you should go your next date night.
I'm a man of very simple taste.
Okay.
May not be the answer you're fishing for.
Oh, this is the answer I want.
My go-to, I have never ever been disappointed enjoying a meal at El Nepal.
That is so good.
Never, man. Look, okay, if it was my last meal, would I probably want, the medium rare porterhouse with, king crab legs, surf and turf combo? Probably. But when all of a sudden I feel my stomach growl and I want to eat in the next 20 minutes, man, El Nepal has never let me down.
Well, that's a perfect answer, because if you go to the Sellersburg location, we're in all the napkin holders with Andy's Roofing. So that's a great answer. We love it. Right. So go check out the napkin holders. Hey, where can people find your information, your videos? What's your website?
Okay, really easy. It's my name, www.ShawnDawley.com. ShawnDawley, ShawnDawley.com. And from there, you can find me with links to social media, and then there's menus of everything that I offer for course offerings.
Awesome. You guys heard it. This guy knows so much, and it would be very valuable to any of your teams or executive level people, just one-on-one, just to learn from. So head over to ShawnDawley.com, read all of his information, watch the videos, reach out to him. But as always, click the link below, subscribe, and hit the bell. Follow all the great things we have going on here at Andy's Roofing, and we'll see you next time.